Well, hello again. Peter Saturday from Universal Dork, back again today to talk about a very strange film all the way from the Netherlands that has really been overlooked by horror fans and genre fans for so many years. And it's one of my favorite little bizarre shockers with an utterly bonkers plot that will leave you scratching your head. This film from 1992 with a really strange name to go along with the odd nature of the film.
The Johnsons.
Yeah, so The Johnsons here is a family affair of the most perverted nature, directed by this guy named Rudolf Vandenberg. It's also known under the title of Zangadix, which is this little character here. We'll get to him later. This is test tube baby menstrual horror at its finest and schlockiest. Trust me on that. And don't confuse this film with the 2011 Ari Aster college project that he released. It's like a 30-minute short film. You know, Ari, who did films like Midsummer and Hereditary, well, he does a film that is far more perverted and disturbing than the Johnsons could ever hope to be. I don't know if anyone here has ever checked that film out by him. It has got some of the most vile plot points that I've seen in a film just in general. That thing is a total shocker. I would say if you're willing to take the plunge on that, you could watch it on YouTube. A completely deranged, sexually perverted plot in that film that you just sort of have to see it to believe it. And it's a little bit strange to me that that film led to his illustrious career in Hollywood as probably one of the most successful and popular horror directors out there nowadays. I will say that the strange thing about the Johnsons, though, and the Johnsons have similar narratives going on that kind of connect them in a very odd way. So traditionally, though, when we think about horror films, from the 80s and 90s, we never really are thinking stuff from the Netherlands. But come to find out, there is kind of a nice little rich history of Dutch horror films from that era that are definitely worth mentioning. Why don't we talk about a few of them right here, right now? Stuff like The Lift from 1983 from this guy named Dick Maas, who's kind of a cult icon horror director from the Netherlands. So this guy did this film called The Lift in 83, and it is about a killer elevator. I shit you not. This film is about an elevator that suddenly develops this kind of like artificial intelligence and goes on a killing spree. That is about as stupid as it gets. And come to find out that his film was also remade in 2001 under the title Down. So someone probably saw his 1983 film and thought, holy shit, we've got to remake that. I mean, who would have thought a premise like that would get him a remake? But Dick Maas also did another fantastic horror giallo film from 1988 called Amsterdam. A really unique and intriguing slasher film with this kind of scuba diver killer that goes all throughout the city using the waterways to snatch people and prey upon his victims. And it features one of the most bonkers boat chases that I have ever seen put on film. You've got to see that. We also had films like Blood Relations, a vampire film, and a movie from 1991 that I'm extremely interested in checking out called Intensive Care, starring George Kennedy, which, from what I've heard, checked it out on Letterboxd, looks to be like a pretty interesting watch. Also had stuff like The Vanishing from 1988. I don't know if you remember in the 90s, The Vanishing with Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland, which was a really fantastic film. That thing was originally based on this 1988 Dutch film called The Vanishing. And both of these films are really worth a watch. The American version's great, and the original version as well, but the original one, of course, has a much darker ending. They're very different in tone in their finales. And films like The Fourth Man from 1983, which is one of Paul Verhoeven's early works, that's worth checking out. And of course, adding to that list, The Johnsons, which is still my favorite of the bunch. But really kind of a small grouping of films in those 2 decades there that were actually legit horror films. So the director Rudolf Vandenberg did another film in the mid-90s that I'm a fan of as well, that I think I saw that first before The Johnsons. So in 1996, he did this weird little thriller called The Cold Light of Day, starring Richard E. Grant. Now, that one goes into some pretty disturbing subject matter. But in 2001, they actually remade that movie with Jack Nicholson, a movie called The Pledge. That also flew under people's radars as well. I remember seeing that one in the theater and noticing that the similarities between The Pledge and The Cold Light of Day were undeniable. And of course, as the story unfolded, they definitely go in different directions, as oftentimes like the American, remakes of foreign films do. They both have very different endings, very different in tone, and how these two films all wrap up, but the premise is exactly the same. But just because I'm a big fan of this film, The Johnsons, doesn't mean that everyone is. in particular the director Rudolf Vandenberg. So his past history of filmmaking before he made The Johnsons, he was really making drama films. And when he signed on to this was his first foray into horror. And when it was all completed, he admits that he was pretty embarrassed of the final product. This is not like anything that he normally makes, and the plot of this film was so perplexing and so bizarre that I think he kind of ran away from it with his tail between his legs for a short time, until he realized that this film had kind of developed a cult following all of its own. In fact, this film, The Johnsons, in 2017 got its own documentary all about the making of this movie called Zangadix Lives, movie that I have not checked out, but after listening to some of the commentary on this DVD here, it's definitely on my list. Okay, so speaking of this film's bizarre little plot here, why don't I just read it off of the back of this nifty little Anchor Bay DVD release of The Johnsons. You ready for this? Here we go. Photographer Victoria Lucas is commissioned by National Geographic to do a photo series in the marshy wilderness of southern Holland. Her teenage daughter, Emily, has been plagued by nightmares in which 7 little boys smear blood all over the white walls of a strange house. Refusing to leave her, Victoria decides to bring Emily to camp out with her in the inhospitable marshes. At the same time, Professor Winston Keller makes an extraordinary discovery about the Ma-Ixtu Indians and their god, Zangadix. According to legend, Zangadix will beget 7 sons who will impregnate their sister in a fatal ritual. From this union, a monstrous creature will be born that will destroy all of the world. Before long, dreams become reality and legend becomes fact. Professor Keller is suddenly faced with a race against time to save a young girl from a fate that will bring about the downfall of all mankind. Directed by multiple Golden Calf winner Rudolf Vandenberg, The Johnsons is a thrilling adventure comprised of supernatural mystery and grueling horror. Now, how does that grab you for an utterly bizarre plot? I would say that this film's storyline is its greatest selling point, because this thing is not ripping off any other film that I can think of. This thing is totally unique, totally ridiculous, totally ludicrous. And it is so fun to watch this idiotic plot unfold on screen and be taken so seriously by all of the actors and the director here. It is, for the most part, played completely straight. And it kind of invented this new sort of genre of horror. Now, I listened to the commentary track, and the director is talking to the 2 writers who wrote the first draft of the film that they titled The Johnson Blues. And the Johnson Blues, they kind of explain the plot in more depth here on the commentary, and they really go into their version of the Johnsons. And I really think someone needs to make that, because their original draft of the film is just as crazy, maybe a little bit more just straight horror and less mystery, but they have got a really great film in the Johnson Blues. Really interesting to hear how films go through the different drafts and how they change over time, and how this Dutch director came and took their screenplay and kind of altered it to make it this larger-than-life sort of prophecy-style end-of-the-world film with all of these 7 deranged brothers chasing their 14-year-old sister around. So very cool commentary on this film, very interesting. And these guys wrote a film. They kind of boast about writing this film called The Substitute and all of the sequels. So that's kind of like their claim to fame. But they're talking to this guy Rudolph and saying, you kind of created a new genre in horror, menstrual horror. And now at first that might sound very strange, but if you watch this film, it becomes very apparent that this director did indeed sort of, invent this weird new genre, because there is a girl in this film who's kind of at the center of the mayhem, this 14-year-old girl who is just waiting to get her period. And the fact that she hasn't gotten her period is one of the biggest focal points of the entire film. So she's sort of depressed that she hasn't gotten her period yet. She said,
all my friends are making fun of me because I haven't gotten my period. Really want to get my period.
It's like getting your period would make you like really fucking cool. I don't know if that's like a normal thing that people kind of consider, for social status, is getting your period. But this girl is very concerned about it. She's complaining to her mom. Her mom is kind of comforting her.
Hey, don't worry, you're going to get it soon.
And lo and behold, when she finally does get it, it really ignites a chain of events here, because She's got 7 brothers. All of them, her and her 7 brothers, were hatched from a test tube in a lab by this scientist who had spent a lot of time in this jungle hanging around with this strange tribe that worshipped this god named Zangadix, this guy on the cover. He's sort of this evil demonic fetus that lives inside of this crystal. So this guy spent a bunch of time with them, and then he comes back and he grows these kids inside of a test tube. And when this girl finally gets her period, these brothers of hers, who are complete psychotic maniacs, and they're locked up in like a maximum security psych ward out on this remote island, because when they were kids, all 7 of them went on a rampage, a killing spree, murdering all of these people and painting a strange symbol on the wall, and they had been locked up ever since. When this girl Emily finally gets her period in the movie, these 7 brothers of hers that she does not know that she has go on a second killing spree, devise a way to bust out of this psych ward that they're in, this maximum security prison, slaughter a bunch of people, and go after this girl. The Johnsons really delves into the occult here. There's some fantastic dream sequences that are also brought to life here. You get like the 7 psychotic, horny brothers walking around completely naked. You see their wangs flopping around, lots of male frontal nudity in this film, and they're wearing these like bizarre like penis masks on their heads. Some very disturbing subject matter here that is kind of brought on screen in a very unoffensive way and somehow made to be extremely fun, some of the dark subject matter that's being covered here. Probably because it's just all so idiotic when you really think about it. And I absolutely love these 7 brothers as the villains. They're shown very early on in the film as well, and probably one of the more sinister sequences, really chilling moments of them as children after they have gotten done killing all of these people in the orphanage, and they're smearing all of this blood and making the symbol all over the wall there. And one of them's got this razor blade in his mouth that he's plucking on, and it makes this sort of like twanging noise that kind of becomes oddly the film's soundtrack. You'll hear this twanging throughout the rest of the film at certain moments, and you will recognize that that's this little kid with a razor blade in his mouth. We follow these 7 brothers. They're all bald when they're children. They're all bald when they're older. They escape, and they smear all of this yellow mud all over their heads that kind of makes them look and appear like zombies or like undead. They have that on their head as well as kids, so they're kind of in this sort of ritualistic behavior that they keep repeating. This film definitely amps it up, especially in its 3rd act, really pushes the horror to the limits. But that's not to say there's not a bunch of really great horror stuff and mystery in the first third of the film, as well as some really great characters introduced, like this professor that works at this college. He is knee-deep into this mystery also. So he's researching all of these strange tribes from the jungles and rituals and prophecies. He's watching these strange films about it that this doctor had brought back with him on his travels when he was hanging out with the tribe, and he finds out that one of these prophecies, this menstrual horror prophecy, is unfolding in the very city that he lives. And we meet his father, who's one of the best characters in the film as well. This sort of like wise witch doctor who's also this kind of womanizing playboy.
Here. What? Problem? Women never do what you say.
He warns his son to stop this investigation immediately. So his character enters into some pretty excellent key moments in the film as well. And eventually you get the professor and the mother and the daughter all sort of teaming up in the finale. So I don't want to give too much away from the plot of this film, but I will say that this one, aside from its insanely entertaining plot going on, also luckily has a lot of cool like special effects, really good cinematography, really great lighting, which can make or break horror films, in my opinion. You've got a lot of inventive camera work going on as well. You can tell that this guy making this film has got some serious skills. Lots of really great locations, too, that they go to. It doesn't just hang around in the city. Actually, a big chunk of the plot takes place out on this island where this woman is accepting this bird watching assignment. This guy drops him off on this island, says, "I'll be back in 3 days." They're out in the middle of the wilderness, mother and daughter, and come to find out they are hanging out on the same island that this maximum security insane asylum that's housing her 7 brothers is also located. So we get some really great sequences on this island in the woods, some great chase sequences, some good gore, some decapitations. A very interesting aspect of this is the city location that it's taking place in. What's going on there is this sort of garbage strike. Mounds of trash everywhere. So giant trash bags just piled up all over the city gives it this real ominous, weird feel to it, almost dreamlike quality to the whole setting of it. And they even find a way at the end to tie in this trash strike that's going on into the plot in a very unique way as well that I really appreciate. This thing goes in all of the schlocky directions that you want it to, and everything does tie into the strange name of this film, the Johnsons. The doctor that initiates this bizarre prophecy with his test tube experiments with the test tube babies, he is Dr. Johnson, and we get to witness what happens to him at the very beginning of the film in a really fun opening as well. So as you can tell, look at the front of this film. You can see some crazy shenanigans going on with her and him there holding something kind of strange there. Who knows if that's his umbilical cord or his penis. My best guess, giving this a second look, is that is his penis. And lastly, this film, even though it's very plot heavy, and I wouldn't really call it a slow burn, but I would say the final third of this thing is action-packed. When these brothers finally escape from the asylum, things kind of go off the rails here in all the best ways, and the film wraps up really nicely in a very disgusting, bloody little bow. I think that this film is ripe for the picking for a Blu-ray release. I mean, come on. I think a lot of people would really enjoy this film. This thing should have a bigger cult following, especially because it has a documentary made about it already. Now, if they release this thing like Vinegar Syndrome or someone like that, if they release this, you got to put that Zangadix Lives documentary on the Blu-ray of the Johnsons. And then there's so many intriguing little tidbits of info from the commentary. You could probably get a lot from the director and a lot of the people that worked on it, just because of the bizarre nature of the storyline that we're following here. I've never really met anyone else out there who likes this film, but I imagine that since it does have a documentary, that there are some people out there. You can get this thing on eBay for probably like $10 right now. So this thing's just waiting to be discovered by a larger audience in the United States. So let me know if you know of any other cool Dutch films that I need to check out or I may have missed out on over the years. I'd love to check out weird foreign films, especially stuff like this that deserves a bigger, wider audience. All right, that's it for me. I will see you next time.